Hello, I'm back. Today we're going to talk about how do we find the area of a parallelogram. Can you believe that? We're going to talk about I can't even say the word today. Parallelograms. Anyway, we have talked about area before, but we only talked about one particular shape. And so you might be asking, why do I need to learn this? Well, because you have to. No, I'm just kidding. Your math career, you're going to go on into geometry and do lots of different things with many different shapes, and you're going to have to be able to find the area of different shapes. So this just happens to be one of those shapes. So let's take a look. Exactly what is a parallelogram? Well, remember, it kind of looks like a rectangle that somebody ran into with a bus and kind of hit it, and it's slanted now. That's the way I think about it anyway. A parallelogram has no right angles at all. So if we look here at this angle, that is not a right angle, not a right angle, not a right angle, and not a right angle. It does have four sides. And as you can see here by my symbols, the opposite sides are parallel to one another. So this side is parallel, this side is parallel. So just a little bit of review on parallelograms. So what formula do we know already? Well, we know a rectangle. How to find the area of a rectangle, which if you remember from that lesson, that was area equals length times width or base times height. So that base times height is going to come in handy today because we're going to be referring to those particular words when we talk about the parallelogram. So when we look at the parallelogram, the neat thing about a parallelogram is we can kind of take one and cut off the sides and move them around, and it becomes a new shape. So I want you to imagine that I took a pair of scissors and I cut off this triangle right here. Now, if I cut this triangle off and I were able to flip it and put it over here, la 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 la, la 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 la, magic, right? What shape would we have minus that? What does that look like? Oh, you said rectangle, didn't you? Okay, so that comes in handy because what did we know the formula for? Oh yeah, a rectangle. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a parallelogram and we're going to think of it like a rectangle, because basically if we were able to cut off that triangle and flip it over, it becomes a rectangle. And we know how to find the area of a rectangle, don't we? But in this case, we're going to use the measurement that is the height. So this right here is going to become the height of my parallelogram. And then this would become my base, or whatever it sits on, okay? Now, any side can be a base. So if I decided I wanted this to be the base, it could be the base. If I want this to be the base, it could be the base. But once I pick my base, that's going to determine my height, where I would find my height. So your choice of base is going to determine your height. So if I took a parallelogram that looked like this, and I made this part my base, then this right here would be my height. If I took a parallelogram that looked similar to this one, and I decided that this was going to be my base, then my height is going to be this very straight dotted line, right? Imagine that straight. Okay, so this would be my height in that instance. Now, most of the time when you have work to do, maybe on a test or something like that, they're going to probably have those dotted lines in there for you, and you're going to know where that height is. But if we didn't have them in, we know how to figure them out. Okay, so here's an example. Parallelogram. I'm going to make this my base because I already have this dotted line which marks my height. So we're going to use that formula, area equals base times height. And so I would have 20 times 10, and that's going to give me 200 centimeters. You better better be thinking squared. Squared, okay? See how simple that is? We're basically taking parallelogram, taking off a corner, flipping it over, making a rectangle, and then just changing our letters that we already knew. Instead of using length times width, we said we could use base times height with rectangles as well, but this time it has to be base times height, okay? So even if I had another parallelogram that looked like, oh, that's a pretty sad one, but just pretend. And let's say that I made my base over here, and so that would mean this is going to be my height, and most of the time our height is going to form a right angle. That's why we have, or I forgot that symbol there. So if my base happened to be 12 inches and my height was 15 inches, then basically I'm going to take base times height, which is going to be 12 times 15. So I'm going to do that over here. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. Bring my 0 down and mark my spot. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 1 is 1. Add them up. Okay, so my area would equal 180. My unit is inches. Square.